We are all set. So, first of all, thank you guys so much for coming to this event in the first place. Diversity and inclusion is something that's very near and dear to my heart and has been for a long time. So I really appreciate the All Things Open event for making this free and open to all because it's incredibly important. So I am here to talk to you about a topic that is not just shaping our present, but has some profound impacts on our future. And that is bias in AI. So you might be thinking, if you are unfamiliar to this topic, that computers are supposed to be objective. You know, it's a computer. I thought so too, until I started working at a company that develops AI algorithms in 2017. And then that started the journey for me toward understanding the nuanced and fascinating and complex world of bias in artificial intelligence. So that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. So a great way to think about bias in AI is to think about how we train these AI models in the first place. So I have my favorite example to share with you guys today. So imagine you are training an AI on how to identify different animals. We'll pick pets because I'm a big dog person. And so you show it a bunch of examples of that, of different types of pets. You've got dogs and cats and rabbits, and it starts to notice patterns. So dogs are a little bit bigger usually, cats have pointy ears and smaller faces. Rabbits have big, long ears. And it starts to really understand that. But what if all you showed it was light-haired chihuahuas? What if that's the only thing you ever showed it? And then you showed it this. What do you think it's going to think it is? Well, obviously, it's going to think it's a dog. You have not given it any information to think otherwise. And it's not that this AI is bad at identifying muffins, and it's not that it's stupid. It's that you have given it limited data in its training data corpus. So this is a fun example, but it sort of illustrates some of the concepts that we're going to talk about today. So we'll go to a more tangible example of a company you may have heard of called Amazon. And Amazon in 2014 had a problem. They had way too many people applying for jobs. Everybody wanted to work at Amazon. And so they thought, how do we sort through all of these? Everyone's applying, you know, how do we find the best candidates? We want to hire the best. And so it created an AI to review all these resumes and to create recommendations, sort of like the way that we have recommendations when we're shopping on Amazon, rating these resumes 1 to 5 stars. That way, then the hiring manager could look at just the top of the top and make hiring decisions based on that. There was, however, a teeny tiny problem. And that is, this AI really didn't like women. Like, really didn't like women. So before we get our pitchforks out, let's understand why this happened. So this AI was trained on 10 years of resumes from successful people who were working in technology roles at Amazon. And it was, so the prior decade, from 2004 to 2014, 78% of US software development identified as male. And so it recognized successful candidates tended to be male. And so it inadvertently inherited this bias, the bias of the world around it, and it made predictions. So it started to downgrade any resume that had any indication that it was a woman applying. So that could be something as simple as women's chess club champion appeared on the resume. Or it could be something like the person went to an all-female college. So this essentially created an AI time warp where the biases of our near past were projected onto our near future. And you would think, like, Amazon fixed it, right? They're huge, they're Amazon. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So they did create methods to reduce and remove the bias on gender-specific terms in this algorithm. However, they decided that this was too important of a use case, and they had no way of knowing if other bias on other dimensions was being introduced based on this algorithm. And so they ended up scrapping the project altogether. This is one of my favorite quotes about bias in AI. An airplane designed badly crashes to the earth and everyone knows, but an algorithm designed badly can go on for a very long time, silently wreaking havoc. This is why this is such an important problem to be talking about, because it's not always evident that bias is in these AI algorithms. In fact, the Amazon example, they went a year of using this before they uncovered that it was biased. And this does not just relate to hiring decisions. It also relates to things like loan approvals or healthcare diagnoses. There is bias in AI in pretty much everywhere that AI exists. And the goal here is not to completely remove bias, because that is, it's perfection. You know, if you're aiming for perfection, you're probably not going to get there. But to identify the use cases where having bias would cause the most harm, and really focusing on those use cases for identifying and removing bias. So imagine that you are applying for a loan. Maybe you want to buy a house, and your loan is denied, not based on your financial history, but based on an AI that identified your race and said, based on historical data, those people don't tend to pay their loans back. So we are going to deny your loan. This is something that actually happened. This is one that has been fixed, but it's really important because these things tend to amplify inequities that already exist in our society. So before we talk about what to do, and sorry about the slightly wonky slides, before we talk about what to do, this is incredibly important because instead of mitigating bias, if this goes on unchecked, instead of mitigating bias, the very technology that we hope would create a more ethical and efficient society could actually amplify and calcify the biases that exist today. So, what do we do about it? I have action items for two groups of people. One is if you work at an AI-powered company, so that encompasses a couple things. You may be at a company that's developing AI. That's obviously very important. You may also be at a company that's using AI, and that's also very important. So if you fall into one of those buckets, I have some recommendations for you. If you don't, stay tuned because there are recommendations for you as well. So the first thing to do is to advocate for diverse teams. So research has shown time and time again that diverse teams outperform teams that are homogenous. And this is actually about more than just performance, though. It's about uncovering blind spots that may be difficult to see if you do not have a diverse team. So I'll give you a concrete example. This is Joy. She was a graduate student at MIT. She was working on developing a facial recognition algorithm, and she noticed something a little bit alarming, which is that her classmates who had lighter skin were identified by this facial recognition algorithm as having a face, and were able to identify who they were. But The facial recognition algorithm couldn't even identify her as a person unless she put on a white mask. So this is not just about representation, this is also about creating technologies that work for everyone, not just a select few. And the next thing is to be intentional about where you use AI. So there are some areas that are at greater risk of causing harm if there is bias in AI. These include decisions like who to hire, who to fire, who to arrest, or who to diagnose with a serious condition. Research has shown that because most healthcare AI is trained on the health records of men, that the AI is actually less likely to diagnose important health problems in women because our bodies work differently. So this is just one example of how not recognizing and identifying those biases can go wrong. And so, as I mentioned before, it's not about eliminating all bias, but it is finding those areas that are most at risk to cause harm. So I promised you guys that if you're not developing AI, there's still things that you can do. So these are things that every person in this room can do. Actually, I'm not 100% sure I saw a small child here, maybe a 2-year-old, so I'm not sure that he's there yet, but soon. So things that everyone can do. The first is to educate yourself about AI. So your presence in this room is a great first step, but I encourage you to not stop there. This is a technology that is increasingly becoming part of our everyday life, and it's very important to understand it, even if you are not in tech. So I highly recommend a book by Professor Ethan Mollick called Co-Intelligence. It offers not just a good primer on AI, which is really important, but also it offers a point of view on how this technology is going to shape our future. And if you guys are worried about getting the resources, there's going to be a QR code later that you can scan that will have links to all of these different resources. The next thing is to understand your own biases. So I have biases, you have biases. Don't get defensive, we all have them. Having them does not make us bad, it makes us human. And the reason that we have biases is actually originally was meant to protect us. So it doesn't take a lot of critical thinking to look at a flame and know that you shouldn't touch it. That is your brain taking in a lot of different information and automatically creating shortcuts. Our brains are bombarded with 11 million pieces of information every second, and they only have the ability to process 50 pieces of information every second. So they create shortcuts. This is where bias comes from in humans. And I'll give you an example. So take a moment, read these two descriptions, and think about who you would rather hire. I'll give you a second. All right, raise your hand if you would like to hire the person on the left. Okay, the person on the right. Okay, looks like a number of you have actually realized that this is a trick question. The words used to describe these women are exactly the same, they're just in the inverse order. So this is an example of something called the halo effect, in which we lock onto information that we're given first, and then we look at reasons to discard information that is not aligned with that original expectation. So you might be thinking, okay, I have biases. They're implicit. I don't know what they are. How do I find out what they are? There's actually a fantastic resource from Harvard that is free to use that lets you go in and take a very simple test, anonymous test, to determine what biases you have. And so it could be biases on the basis of sexuality or age or disability. It could be weight or race. And so all of these have separate tests, and I will link to that in the QR code later as well. So you might learn something new about yourself, and it's really important to understand what our biases are so that we can make sure that we are not acting upon them in ways that cause harm or reinforce inequality in our society. And finally, it's important to be critical consumers of AI. So depending on your level of technical savvy, you may or may not know that AI is everywhere in our lives. And I'm not just talking about on stages and in the news and things like that. It's in applications that we use every day. So if you have facial recognition on your phone to unlock your phone, that's AI. If you get personalized shopping recommendations based on your history and your experience and your use of different platforms or applications, that's AI. If you use a navigation application to avoid traffic, that's AI. So, it's important when we're using these types of applications to think through what biases might be at play here and to be aware that bias can be introduced into anything that is created using artificial intelligence. So, key takeaways. First, educate yourself about AI. I'm excited to see that there are some other talks on this topic today, so you'll be getting a great primer for that. Understand your own biases. Take just a little bit of time. You can do it on a break, you can do it between sessions, you can do it tomorrow, but don't forget to do this because it's an important step that helps us all become better people. And finally, be critical consumers of AI. Understand that bias can be introduced into these systems, and if you see it, say something. Most of these applications, most of these technology companies have some sort of mechanism for reporting bias. And often they have it so that they have expected behavior of the system and unexpected behavior of the system. And especially with AI, unlike a lot of other areas of tech, the AI can sometimes respond in ways that the developers didn't intend or even foresee. This is why companies like ChatGPT and Claude spend so much time red teaming these applications. It's because they know what they built it to do, and it does that really well. But what are some unintended consequences that could be harmful? And identifying those. So if you see bias, say something. If you see something, say something. All right, this one's important to have fully visible. So resources from this talk. I've given a lot of resources throughout the talk. This will give you a link to different books, to the survey that I mentioned. So snap a shot of this, and you should be able to get all of those resources very easily, all in one page. Also, if you're interested in staying up to speed on AI and bias in AI, you can follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I post often about this topic and about other areas of AI that affect all of us and society. And so you can use that same page to connect with me or follow me. The road to ethical AI is not going to be simple, and it's not going to be easy. But with each step we take, with each bias we uncover and address, we are taking a step closer to a world where technology doesn't just enforce the biases that we already have, it creates an inclusive future that works for everyone. So I hope you'll join me on this journey. Thank you.